Thank you all for joining us today for the Community Choice Aggregation webinar, where we're going to talk a little bit about aggregation, how to use aggregation to achieve your environmental clean energy goals through local governments. We've got some fantastic speakers that are going to speak to you all today. We've got an interesting conversation across 3 cities that are leading in this space. So excited to hear from them. You're also going to hear from my colleagues at PCFO who worked on this toolkit and developed it. We're very excited to be able to share it with you all. If you have not taken a look at it yet, we encourage you to visit our website. Here in a second, we'll drop into the chat the link to the aggregation toolkit that you can find online. There's a lot of information in there, so please take some time to take a look and review it. We will, of course, have some time for your questions. We'll go through the actual resource itself to better understand how to use it. But we, of course, will be able to answer all of your questions at the end. We'll have an option to ask questions to our panelists as well. So with that, I will go ahead and kick it off by just introducing myself and our organization, Power Clean Future Ohio. So my name is Joe Flaherty. I serve as the Executive Director of PCFO. We launched in February 2020. I think we've got many PCFO communities here today, along with several others representing other organizations or other cities that are not yet part of PCFO, and we're excited to speak with you all. As an organization, our sole focus is to be a partner with local governments and help them drive change locally to adopt clean energy, meet their environmental goals, and adopt other initiatives to serve environmental justice imperatives within their community. It's completely free for local governments to participate in this work. We know that there are constraints on your budgets to be able to do this. And certainly one of the topics we'll discuss today is how aggregation can be a tool to save you money as well. But our work is completely free for local governments to participate. In order to join, you just pass a resolution through your city council and become a PCFO community. So we would love to work with you on aggregation among a whole variety of other topics. We work across renewable energy, energy efficiency, transportation, electrification, and land use as those 4 key areas, and have a variety of different support mechanisms to make sure that you can achieve your goals in each of those, but also do this work in a comprehensive way. So we're really excited to have you join us today. We'll start with a little aggregation primer, but I'll kick it over to Nat to talk about the full agenda for today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Joe, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Nat Ziegler, and I'm a program manager with Power Clean Future Ohio, and I have the great fortune to work with local governments around the state on all sorts of sustainability and clean energy initiatives, including community choice aggregation. So at the outset of our event for today, just to look at what our program will entail, we'll go through what our goals are for today. We'll go through a primer about what community choice aggregation is, and then we'll turn it over to the core of our event today, our panel discussion with some local government leaders in this space. And then we'll have time for audience question and answer session so that we can have room for you all to ask the questions that you want to ask and get the information that you're hoping to get about community choice aggregation today. And then we'll close with an overview about PCFO's specific technical assistance around community choice aggregation and how to use our new recently released community choice aggregation toolkit. So today's goals, today we really want to share and convey why community choice aggregation matters as a policy tool for sustainability and clean energy in Ohio. And we want to facilitate dialogue amongst local governments and stakeholders and residents about aggregation program successes and challenges. And again, how this is a tool for emissions reductions for local governments. We also definitely want audience members to leave today with an understanding of how to use our toolkit and how our member communities can access our technical assistance around community choice aggregation. The whole process of community choice aggregation, we could really go down all of the nuts and bolts and technical details of the process. That is what is really laid out in our toolkit. We are hoping that today we can speak at a high level about some of the overarching successes and challenges that exist for local governments in terms of community choice aggregation. So moving on to our brief primer about aggregation to lay some shared context for today. I imagine amongst our audience, we've probably got quite a range of familiarity with the topic of community choice aggregation. We have some local government officials and staff on the call who have been working with this topic for a while. We may have some stakeholders that are completely new to the conversation. So just to hopefully get on the same page before we move into the panel, community choice aggregation is a tool that enables local governments to purchase electricity from a specific source and at a specific price. So it's a tool that gives local governments the power of collective bargaining by combining residents and small businesses and municipal facilities for better terms on electricity. It can be used for natural gas or electricity. Our toolkit and our panel today and our specific areas of technical assistance really are in regards to electric aggregation. Community choice aggregation is prominent in Ohio. It's been available since 1999 when Senate Bill 3 led to the creation of the competitive electric supply market. And in Ohio, community choice aggregation is regulated by the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, and the PUCO also has the most accurate and the best source of information on aggregation requirements in the state. So definitely encourage folks to check out the PUCO's website for reference as well. So community choice aggregation is a somewhat unique policy tool. It's authorized in 10 states, just 10 states. Ohio is one of them. And this map from the local energy aggregation network shows the other 9 states where it's authorized and shows that there's some states where this is being investigated and potentially made available. So the reason aggregation is available, one of the reasons that aggregation is available in Ohio is because in Ohio, the supply of electricity and the delivery of electricity are separate. And so while we work with our utilities around the state to have our electricity supply delivered along the power lines that we all see on a day-to-day basis, and we pay our electric bills to the utilities that service us, supply can come from an array of sources. And so community choice aggregation allows, again, governments to choose where that supply comes from based on local priorities, financial and cost goals, and environmental and workforce goals. From the consumer end, whether that's the residential end or the small business end, nothing changes. They receive electricity from the same utility, but what does change potentially is the price at which they receive their electricity and the source and supply at which they achieve their electricity. And I will turn it back over to Joe to round out this primer and introduce our panel.
Thank you, Nat. I think one of the important things we can do is, again, we wrap up this primer here, is to set the guardrails around what community choice aggregation is and what it is not, because I think it can be a little bit confusing. Certainly, we've heard this from residents, but it can be confusing also for key decision makers, council members, as we've gone before councils to give them these educational materials on this policy topic. It can be challenging to make sure you fully wrap your mind around how this would work. So as Nat mentioned, being that we have a competitive energy supply market in Ohio, the decisions on infrastructure locally about your wires and the reliability of the grid come to your electric distribution utility. So aggregation as a tool will not fix blackouts, for example, or other outage issues that you may have locally. That again goes to your electric distribution utility. It is not a guaranteed savings. I think sometimes it can be sold this way, and I think it's really important for folks to remember as you're considering aggregation. It is a good way to potentially find savings for your residents, but it is not a guarantee that you will capture those savings every year. Again, this is a way to navigate the market. We're competing as these various aggregators are competing up against pricing from large utilities. And so how do you do that? Certainly some are better at it than others, I'll say that much, but there's definitely ways in which you can get savings for your residents, but it is not a guarantee. Also, it's not a tax on residents. I think one of the confusing things about this is that there isn't a cost for local governments to do this. They're entering into a contract to do this work with an aggregator, with a broker. with a council of governments. And in doing that, it's built in, their services are built into the supply of electricity. In some cases, there will be a fee that the local government could pay, but this is not a tax on residents. Also, it's not a requirement that a city pass this. This is not something any city has to do. It's an option for you to deploy this resource, this tool in support of your residents. So I think it's important to remember that. Also, if you have aggregation authority, there is also no mandate that you put it, you actually take action on it, right? You could have this authority and it could sit dormant. We've seen that in several cases where cities have had the authority to aggregate and it sits dormant for many years. And so those are all important to remember as well. But it is also an incredibly impactful tool to reduce emissions. And I want to make sure to emphasize this point because this is something that drives at the heart of what we do in our mission. When we talk to local governments about how they can pursue a carbon reduction goal, set a greenhouse gas goal and achieve it, one of the key measures that we recommend right up front, the highest impact you can have in the very near term, is to implement a community choice aggregation program that transitions your community from the traditional electric supply of the utility to a choice that you all can make, hopefully 100% renewable energy. That is the quickest savings you can get to. But it is also a really unique tool that allows you to cater it to your community. What we have seen in a few cases, Cincinnati and Columbus are notable examples of this, is they're using their aggregation programs to help drive the local market for renewable energy. And so they're ensuring that they're, in the long term, that their aggregation programs will have offtake agreements with local renewable energy projects, local solar projects built here in Ohio by Ohioans and serving our grid. So I think those are notable examples as well of how you can take aggregation from what has historically just been a tool to find savings for residents and now using it to achieve a variety of other initiatives as well. So as you can see on this list, we've got our PCFO communities displayed here, all of which have aggregation authority and are running aggregation programs. All to varying degrees. Some are using a traditional brown energy mix. Others are 100% renewable energy. We are very proud of the work that many of these communities are done and leading in this space. And again, you'll get to hear from a few of them today. But it's not just these communities. There are a ton of communities all across Ohio that are utilizing this tool. 632 communities have that local community choice aggregation authorization to implement a program. So it's a widely used program, also one that you can look to key experts in this area and also talk to your peers in other cities that have done this, how it's worked and how they've also come across issues with it as well. All right, so I have the pleasure to introduce our panel today. So I will ask our panelists to come on to video if you can do that now. Thank you all. So we get to hear from some key experts who have implemented community choice aggregation in their communities. And so I'm very excited to introduce them to you all today. First, I'll introduce Rob McCracken, who serves as the energy manager in the city of Cincinnati for the Office of Environment and Sustainability. His work around implementing climate action goals is specifically outlined in the Green Cincinnati Plan. I'm sure he would love to talk to you more about it if you're interested in learning about the Green Cincinnati Plan. But I will just say, as someone who gets to work with Rob on a regular basis, he is known as someone who just gets stuff done and is incredibly knowledgeable and immensely effective at what he does for the city of Cincinnati. So we're very excited to have him here today to talk about their aggregation program. Next, I will introduce Tom Bullock, who's a city council member in the city of Lakewood. I've known Tom, I've had the chance to work with Tom for several years now. And as a council member, speaking to that specific role that he's in and representing today, he's been a champion in the city of Lakewood for improving their neighborhoods. And in the vein of climate action, as a champion around clean vehicles, park revitalization, making his community more walkable, and really has deployed a comprehensive approach to advocating on climate change at the local level. So it's a pleasure to work with Tom in his day job, but also in his work here as a city council member. Finally, Meg Maloney is the sustainability manager at the city of Dayton. I consider Meg probably the most energetic and innovative sustainability leader in the entire state, just an endless motor to do this work and a fierce advocate for the city of Dayton. In her role, she advocates for a sustainable future for Dayton residents and businesses through energy and environmental justice programs. Meg, over the past 3 years, from 2022 to 2024, has helped save residents and small businesses $10 million through their energy programs in Dayton. So a real testament to the work that she's done on behalf of residents in Dayton.
Thank you for those introductions, Joe. Yeah, we are super grateful to have Meg, Tom, and Rob here today to speak about their expertise and insight on aggregation. We'll start by asking all of the panelists to add to that introduction and tell our audience about your communities, your emissions reductions goals and sustainability goals, and how your role in particular relates to both those emissions reductions goals and the aggregation process in your city. So we'll start with Rob. So Rob, if you could introduce Cincinnati and your role and how your role relates to aggregation.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nat. And thank you, Joe, for that kind introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Rob McCracken. I am the energy manager here in the city of Cincinnati. I've been here almost 3 years. As Joe mentioned, the Green Cincinnati plan is what kind of guides the work that our office does. Two of the big components of that would be the climate goals that we have, our carbon goals. So by 2050, we want to have a 100% net zero. And by 2035, we're looking at a 50% reduction from our original 2008 inventory. So one of the things that we found as we have done our carbon inventories is that our built environment is about 60% of our carbon emissions. So anything we can do as a city to help reduce that is really critical to us being able to achieve that. And so that's one of the reasons why we've really tried to leverage our community choice aggregation program, as well as just the purchasing we do for our city facilities to help make a dent in those emissions. And so I think that's a good kind of introduction to the kind of what's driving our interest in community aggregation here.
Thanks so much, Rob. I will turn it over to Tom to answer next.
Hi, everybody. Tom Bullock, Lakewood City Council. We're an entering suburb of Cleveland, 52,000 people, and have been in aggregation since the beginning. We were one of the first members of NOPEC, and that was the first aggregation in the state in the year 2000. There's a broader conversation about the benefits of what aggregation does. It's really a service to your residents for power purchase and negotiation. And traditional consumer advocacy started years ago, was really focused on cost, reliability, things like that. As climate and sustainability has become an increasing focus for more and more of us, as it should, and it is for me, aggregation emerges as an enormous tool to be successful. Because think about it, city governments, we have to work on our own operations internally. We have city vehicles, we have city facilities, we have city operations, but then there's all the private property owners in our communities. And it's probably not going to be successful to just write a law that says, every property owner, every business owner shall achieve carbon zero by date certain. So what we're wrestling with is how to facilitate success for the whole community, not just for our own government, but for the whole community. So that's where aggregation becomes an exciting tool. Our goal is also zero emissions by 2050. We have nearer term goals for the city of Lakewood itself. We really have already attained that thanks to citywide contracts for city usage of clean power 100%. 4 or 5 years ago, we did that. And we'll talk more about how that's now spread to the residents at large. And that's all done through our aggregation work with NOPEC.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. And Meg, if you could round us out with these introductions.
Yeah, hello. As Nat and Joe mentioned, I'm Meg. I am the sustainability manager for the city of Dayton. Dayton is 140,000 people. We, at one point in time, had the most inventions per capita, so we're a very innovative city. And I would like to say we continued that innovation as one of the first cities to adopt a 100% renewable aggregation program in 2022. And we started our aggregation program for similar goals. We have a city goal to be carbon neutral by 2050, and we identified that a lot of residents were interested in purchasing renewables, but didn't really know how to do that. So this aggregation program served as a model for us to do that. In addition, it also generated some revenue for our sustainability office to further a lot of our renewable goals as well. So we get some funding from our program that's been helping us explore adding rooftop solar, adding ground mount solar, electrifying our fleet. So aggregation has really powered our sustainability office to aggressively try and tackle some of our emission targets, while also in the process helping provide a competitive price for residents for their supply.
Thank you all very much. We've gotten into a little bit about how your aggregation programs are structured. And I want to, Tom, I know NOPEC has been with the city of Lakewood since the beginning. But for Meg, your aggregation program is relatively new, having launched recently. So can you tell us kind of how you got to that place of starting an aggregation program, and what does it look like today, and how are residents engaging with it?
I can start with that one. So, yeah, how we started was a very interesting process. So we had an aggregation program. I should say we restarted it in 2022. We had an aggregation program that was enacted, I think, around 2011, and then it kind of went on and off for a various amount of time. And then when I came into the city of Dayton in 2020, I was tasked with restarting the program. And what I did is I started interviewing a lot of private brokers and then also Council of Government models, so SOPEC and NOPEC. And what I found is that a lot of people, even though aggregation has the same goals, a lot of people can customize the program differently. So aside from renewables versus non-renewables, cities like Athens are adding a kind of fee in there that they generate to put solar on their municipal buildings. So there's like creative ways that you can use aggregation. So essentially what we started doing at the city of Dayton is I just interviewed a series of people. We didn't end up doing a formal RFP process, though. If cities are starting aggregation programs, I think I would have saved a lot of time if I had just done a formal RFP, but interviewing people was very fun too. And what we realized is we were really attracted to the Council of Government models for a variety of reasons, just because of the the collaborative nature with working with other cities and also being able to work together to achieve our sustainability goals together. So that is why we picked a Council of Government models, and that's why we picked SOPEC, which is procuring 100% renewable energy for all of their communities. They have spread from just mostly the Appalachian Athens region to now to Dayton and to Cleveland. So there's been a lot of communities that have joined with SOPEC, and that's where we're at right now.
Thank you. And Rob, maybe could you speak a little bit for your aggregation program, one of the unique aspects of this is the New Market Solar Project. I had the chance to attend the groundbreaking of that project, and to see it come online now is very exciting. So can you speak to what that model has looked like in this Ohio-based solar asset that you all have, and what that looks like going forward for you all to try to further incentivize local generation in your mix?
Yeah, sure thing. So we started our aggregation program here. I think the legislation was passed back in 2011. Kind of since its inception, we've really focused on green energy. So we've purchased renewable, most likely renewable wind RECs, national wind RECs, since the inception of the program to cover the load generated through the aggregation program. Several years ago, our former mayor said we should really figure out how to get large-scale solar incorporated into it, to be more local with that. That put us on the path to kind of helping to stand up, or to be one of the subscribers, I guess, to a 100 megawatt solar array about 40 miles east of town in Highland County. 35 megawatts of that goes to our city operations. The other 65 goes to our residential aggregation program. That 65 megawatts only covers about 30% of the of our total load for that aggregation program. So there's plenty of space for us to fill in. So what we're able to do, when we were looking for a partner, being able to incorporate that load in was really important. And so we actually, the city, did not sign the PPA on that 65 megawatts. That's actually signed by our supplier, our aggregation supplier. So they hold the PPA and then incorporate the production into kind of the energy purchase they make for the city. And then we continue to round out the rest of that with those national wind recs to keep ourselves at 100% green. So, it's certainly, an interesting project, a different interesting way to try to incorporate that. We're looking at ways to kind of continue to expand with local solar. So we just recently closed an RFP, like the first round of an RFP, to try to identify other solar assets, hopefully within 100 miles of the city, that we could potentially get another PPA on to incorporate into that. So looking for ways to continue to grow our local purchase of renewable energy.
Awesome. And Tom, you represent on this panel the longest running aggregation program here. How has that program changed over time, and what have you seen it in working with NOPEC for that to evolve, and specifically as we think about our topic today around renewable energy purchasing?
Sure. Well, so NOPEC has a 100% green community choice program that Lakewood is enrolled in, one of the charter members of that. And we have more than 20,000 households enrolled in that. Quite a lot of electricity and RECs retired, more than 1,000 businesses enrolled in that just in the first, kind of time increment. So a lot of help and turnkey success when we joined that program. And in addition to that, NOPEC has a number of ancillary programs and services. There's grants back to the community, which we've used. We've received more than $1 million. We've used for converting streetlights to LEDs, installing public-facing electric vehicle charging equipment. We've got 2 electric Cushmans. We need to improve that. And actually, we're talking now, and I want to acknowledge our sustainability coordinator, Jill Bartoletta, who is a new talent on Lakewood's team, is on this call. And she and NOPEC are talking about getting a fleet analysis conducted so that we can begin really overdue, frankly, work at our city to begin to incorporate zero emissions vehicles into our vehicle fleet. There's other stuff too. There's energy audits, there's financing for businesses. Again, there's 2 layers of this conversation. One is to the city government. 2, and even bigger, is to the community at large, whether that's residential customers or businesses in your community. And I think one of the emerging challenges is it's not just dollars, it's the complexity of doing projects. It's the informational lift to get people's heads wrapped around it, to get the property owner educated, to understand the task, really energy efficiency. Somebody just told me, go lean before you go green. That's the step 0. And then you spec a project, and then you have to financially make it affordable. If we're going to be successful, like Lakewood's climate action plan calls for deep retrofits citywide. Well, we've got 27,000 households, more than 13,000 1- and 2-family homes. That doesn't count the multifamily and business buildings. That's a lot of work. How are we going to get that done? We need a partner. And I increasingly look to NOPEC, and they've stepped up to the plate as a information source to help work with the early adopters and to get some demonstration projects going. Some of those will be city government projects, but some are going to be, businesses and private property owners in our community.
Thank you, Tom. And I just want to underscore, make 2 quick comments. Nat, I know you've got a question for the panelists here as well. One of the other key aspects of this, you mentioned local projects, ensuring that your aggregation program has a net metering policy that allows your local residents who are participating in your aggregation program to be able to install rooftop solar and then be able to take advantage of the cost savings that they get as a result. So just for folks that are looking at their net or at their aggregation program or talking to someone that could potentially provide those services, asking that question about, are you going to be able to provide net metering to my residents who are going to participate in the aggregation program? So that's really important. And one other comment here is just as folks are listening, if there's questions you have, please submit those in the chat so we can make sure that we collect those and get those answers to you, whether they're in the toolkit or the panelists here can answer the questions as well. So thanks, Nat.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And certainly, I think, if we have time, we'd love to hear more from Rob and Meg about the additional benefits, like how Tom was talking about with NOPEC, with Lakewood, the community benefits that your aggregation programs provide. But seeing that we have many of our PCFO member community, local government officials and staff on the call today, I would love to ask a question to Meg to start, and then others can jump in as desired, about what would you advise another municipality, a partner in a peer city in Ohio who is at the outset of the process of creating an aggregation program? What would you advise them? And yeah, what would you advise them about starting a community choice aggregation contract, renegotiating it? I'll turn that over to you, Meg.
Yeah, my first thing is aggregation can seem very intimidating. So if anyone feels overwhelmed at the beginning of the process, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It was something that I knew nothing about when I started, and it's PCFO and partners that can really support you and help explain kind of that process. So I'd encourage you to lean on PCFO and their primer to kind of help you start understanding the process. The second piece is understanding what your residents want in a program. So like there are different models. There are private brokers, there are council of government models. You can go to the supplier directly, which is kind of what Cincinnati did and what the city of Dayton has done in the past. We just went directly to a supplier. So you have these different models. And what I tell people is like the easiest way to know which model you should go with is knowing what your residents want. And so talking to your council, city manager, mayor, and understanding like, what are your priorities? Do you want more control over the contracting process? If so, if people want to be working directly with that supplier, usually a supplier model is better. If you don't have designated energy staff to be focusing on aggregation, then I usually encourage people to go with a broker model, but that's when you kind of go into like a private versus public broker. So I think there are ways that you can like prioritize, like what does our city want aside from like renewable energy? Then the third piece is becoming just well-educated on the different parts of the process. So if you go with the broker model, the broker is going to the supplier on your behalf. And there's a lot of different things that could go into that contract. You can encourage, again, net metering. So SOPEC has put net metering as a priority. So we're allowed to net meter, whereas some brokers don't negotiate with that with their supplier. So if you have people within your community that have solar, they can't net meter while on their aggregation program, which has been an issue I know for some cities. Second piece too is looking at broker fees and also the fee you can get for community grants. So a lot of aggregation programs could give you community grant dollars. We also get community grant dollars as well. It's been huge for our program. As I mentioned in the beginning, it really funds a lot of the work that we do in our sustainability office. But you can actually negotiate what those community grant dollars look like, how much you want coming into your community, how much you want going to the broker. So you can negotiate those fees. And a lot of times when people do an RFP, I really encourage them to ask them like how everything is broken down within that RFP process if you're going after a broker model, because I think sometimes a broker will just tell you they're going to give you a lot of money, but not explain that that's going to also be reflected in the price of energy your residents are paying. So I know that's like a lot of information, but I do think when people have like a priority list, it helps them navigate kind of where they want to end up, and then asking the right questions when they're going into that. Starting their CCA program is huge. And then lastly, I really encourage people to talk to other cities. That was like a lifeline to me. There were brokers that I was like, wow, that broker seems amazing. And then I called the city and they're like, nope, it's not going well for us. And not just, sometimes that wasn't just price. It was just like, how